I want to explore talking about the theology aspect of righteousness in the movies as we look through the current decades. When we talk about righteousness, we're talking about being holy as God is holy, this perfect standard that God is God called us to, living in the way of righteousness, allowing ourselves to be transformed by Him, and making sure that the media that we watch allows us to help us along that way. Two specific areas that I want to look at are sexuality and profanity, and I want to look at them and kind of trace them through the different decades and make the point that we have to be mindful of the media that we choose to consume and how it will affect us. So we're going to start with the 1920s. All of these movies are very indicative of the era that they were made in. And so in the 1920s, we still have very strict morals. In fact, there's laws surrounding what can and can't be seen on screen. Things like nudity, profanity, sexual content, all of those things are all very much strictly prohibited. In the movie Intolerance, one of the things that stuck out to me was there was a scene where one of the temple girls is walking. The temple girls are walking around, and we would expect, in by today's standards, them to be very skimpily dressed, but they were not. They were very dressed, very modestly by today's standards. But that was what the standard was. That was considered immodest for the day. In the movie The Jazz Singer, we don't see any foul language. Again, these are silent movies, I get that. But there's no silent movie. There's no foul language. There's no profanity in it. There's things hinted at, but there's never really anything spoken of in reality. We move to the 1930s and we begin to see this shift. And what we're going to see as we move forward now is that Christian values are going to stay the same, but culture is going to make a shift towards being more open. And so we'll see the dress is a little bit more provocative for the day, not provocative for the today's standards, but we also see the iconic line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," which takes place at the very end of the movie. Again, beginning to use profanity. There are words that are used in these movies and earlier movies and later movies, to be completely honest, to talk about racial groups that are considered profane now, but weren't at that time, and that's not what I'm talking about because that's a different cultural aspect. But we do begin to see this shift and this drift of media no longer reflecting what Christian morals look like. In the 50s and the 60s, we are beginning to see a change. Things are loosening up, again, not by today's standards. And now what's happening here in these movies today, we hail that as like, hey, this is a great movie to watch. I remember as a kid being encouraged to watch older TV shows and movies because they weren't so morally repugnant as the current movies and things that were being around. But in Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest, there was a scene, they're on the train and they go from the dining car back to her room to have an encounter, and you see them go into the room. She kind of gets dressed in her pajamas. He takes off his tie and his jacket. They begin to kiss sitting on the bed, and then it kind of goes dark, and then it reopens again with them the next morning laying in the bed together. What's insinuated is that they've had a sexual encounter, but we don't see that encounter. Again, that was very scandalous for this time period, but for today is not that scandalous because it's very different than what we see. In the 1970s, and we're really going to kind of look beyond, things kind of really accelerate here. And what we see happening is that there is all nature of things being shown on screen. So sexual encounters, profane language, all of these types of things are being shown for anyone to watch and anyone to consume. Movies like The Network, as well as All the President's Men, and really kind of any movie that you can see, and they kind of begin to build this where we see this much more profound drift in difference between Christian values and what media is today. One of the things the conclusions I brought out in my paper was that while there are many conservative groups that believed you shouldn't go to the movies and you shouldn't consume any type of media, and I think there's a lot of truth to that, because we do need to be careful about the media that we're intaking, and we need to decide for ourselves personally what is best for me, what will cause me to stumble, what won't cause me to stumble, what can I watch, what can the people around me watch, take into consideration all of those things. I don't think we can completely withdraw from the culture either, because media is one of the best ways I think that we can have an idea of what's going on in the culture and to understand the worldview of the people around us. And the media that a culture or a group of people puts out gives us a window into how they think about life, which is incredibly helpful as we think about taking the gospel to someone, being able to know how they think and how they think about things, to be able to present the gospel message to them is profoundly important in those things. So we have to kind of weigh those. What is good for me and profitable versus what is good and profitable for me to have an understanding of what we need to know about the world around us. Thanks for listening, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.